runs Africa? This question has echoed across the continent for decades, voiced in government offices and shouted in the streets during protests. Many believe the answer has always been the same: the West. But Burkina Faso's 35-year-old president, Ibrahim Traoré, isn't accepting that narrative. He's flipped the script by launching the Treasury Deposit Bank, a move hailed as a bold step toward true financial independence from Western dominance. But is this truly a new era for Burkina Faso, or just another chapter in the ongoing saga of Africa's economic struggles? Let's explore. Is this the dawn of financial freedom for Burkina Faso, or simply another way for the elite to amass wealth? West Africa, comprised of 16 nations, is one of the richest regions globally. Yet, despite its vast resources, many people can barely afford a meal a day. Access to education, housing, and healthcare remains out of reach for most. How is it possible to be so poor amidst such wealth? The root issue lies in the fact that we no longer control our resources, and those resources aren't being used for the benefit of our people. This concern strikes at the core of the matter. On the surface, the creation of the Treasury Deposit Bank seems like a win for the people of Burkina Faso, a chance to wrest control from foreign hands and return it to the nation. However, the West cautions against getting swept up in patriotic enthusiasm, and that holds some truth. So, why is this move significant? Let's start with who stands to gain from it. A government-owned bank linked to the national treasury is a powerful concept, particularly in Burkina Faso, a nation long bound by the economic chains of its colonial past. For decades, the Central Bank of West African States, BCAO, has acted as the central bank for Burkina Faso and other Francophone countries, operating under the influence of the Bank of France. This arrangement has frustrated many, as it's seen as a colonial relic that continues to financially tether African nations to their former colonizers. By establishing the Treasury Deposit Bank, President Traoré signals a definitive break from the past. Burkina Faso will no longer need to channel its financial transactions through systems controlled by foreign powers. The new bank is designed to manage the nation's public funds, allowing for investment in its own infrastructure, education, and healthcare systems without being dependent on loans from Western institutions that often come with strings attached. This move is nothing short of groundbreaking. It represents a declaration of economic independence, a refusal to remain shackled by the financial systems that have long impeded Africa's progress.
New colonial exploitation and oppression, and is one of the richest regions in the world. You find everything in West Africa. And in spite of all of these riches, many of our people cannot afford a meal a day. Many of our people have no access to education. They have no access to housing. They have no access to healthcare. How come that we are so poor in the midst of so much riches? Because we no longer own our resources, and our resources are not exploited for the benefit of our people.
On August 2nd, military ruler Captain Ibrahim Traoré inaugurated Burkina Faso's first state-owned bank, the Treasury Deposit Bank, in the capital, Ouagadougou. Traoré described the bank as being more accessible to the people and contributing to the country's socio-economic development through more appropriate financing methods for projects and programs. He urged both the public and private sectors to utilize the bank, participating in the shared goal of building a sovereign economy. The bank has three primary objectives: providing infrastructure financing, supporting local businesses, and strengthening the nation's financial independence. The creation of Burkina Faso's Treasury Deposit Bank is aimed at addressing the country's financial needs and supporting the growth of key sectors. However, critics are raising concerns. Power, like wealth, tends to concentrate at the top, and while the establishment of a national bank might appear to be a win for the people, the reality is often more complex. In a country where corruption has been widespread, what guarantees that this bank won't become just another tool for the elite to enrich themselves? Time and again, we've seen this pattern. The poor are promised relief, while the wealthy grow richer. Though President Ibrahim Traoré may be sincere in his desire to lift Burkina Faso out of poverty, sincerity alone won't dismantle a system that has been rigged for decades. Nevertheless, the potential of this move shouldn't be dismissed. If handled correctly, the Treasury Deposit Bank could indeed serve as a vehicle for true financial independence. The real test lies in whether it can deliver on its promises and genuinely serve the people of Burkina Faso, or if it will simply become another mechanism of exploitation, keeping the poor marginalized while the rich continue to thrive on the spoils of supposed independence. Now, a key question arises. Could Burkina Faso's bold initiative spark a financial revolution across Africa? Before we start celebrating, we need to look more closely at what's happening. Traoré's decision to establish the Treasury Deposit Bank is undeniably courageous and has been praised by some as the dawn of a new era for Africa. For too long, African nations have been forced to adhere to rules dictated by Washington, Paris, and London. Institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, and the Bank of France have set the terms of economic engagement, often to the detriment of the very people they claim to assist. This has created a vicious cycle of debt and dependency, preventing Africa from realizing its true potential. At its core, Burkina Faso's decision to establish the Treasury Deposit Bank is a powerful statement, a declaration of independence, signaling a refusal to remain beholden to the financial institutions that have long hindered Africa's progress. If Traoré's gamble pays off, it could inspire other African leaders to take similar actions. This isn't just about one nation. It's about the entire continent standing up and taking control of its future. However, we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. The road to financial independence is long and full of challenges. Entrenched elites benefiting from the status quo and international powers with vested interests in maintaining their influence present formidable obstacles. Nevertheless, this is a battle worth fighting. Africa cannot afford to continue being a pawn in the global economic game. It must assert itself as a player in its own right. Still, the West argues that Africa will need Western support. It can't entirely abandon these relationships. So, is Burkina Faso overextending itself? Skeptics have been asking this question ever since Traoré announced the establishment of the Treasury Deposit Bank, and it's a valid concern. While the prospect of financial independence is appealing, going it alone comes with significant risks that could do more harm than good. One of the greatest dangers is economic instability. Let's be honest, Burkina Faso is not a financial giant. It's a small, landlocked country with limited resources and a fragile economy. By breaking away from the BCEAO and creating its own central bank, Burkina Faso is venturing into uncharted territory. Without the safety net provided by the CFA franc and the BCEAO, the country is vulnerable to economic shocks that could have devastating effects. There's also the issue of inflation. If the Treasury Deposit Bank isn't managed properly, it could trigger runaway inflation, a scenario that has already played out in other African nations seeking economic independence. Zimbabwe is a prime example of this. In the early 2000s, after abandoning its currency and printing money to cover debts, the country's economy spiraled into hyperinflation, with inflation peaking at an astronomical 89.7 sextillion% per month. However, Burkina Faso is not Zimbabwe, and Traoré is not Mugabe. While the parallels are worth considering, they shouldn't be exaggerated. If the Treasury Deposit Bank begins printing money recklessly, it could indeed lead to an inflationary crisis. But Traoré appears to understand the stakes and seems likely to proceed with caution. His vision for Burkina Faso is one of careful, calculated steps toward financial independence, not reckless abandonment. Another significant risk is political instability. By challenging the existing financial system, Traoré is undoubtedly making enemies both domestically and abroad. The elites who have benefited from the current system are unlikely to surrender their power easily, and there's no telling how far they will go to protect their interests. Additionally, Western powers have a long history of interfering in African politics, and they are unlikely to watch passively while one of their former colonies attempts to sever ties with their influence. But we shouldn't underestimate Traoré. He knows he's playing a high-stakes game. Yet he also recognizes that the old way of doing things is unsustainable. Burkina Faso cannot continue relying on a system designed to keep it in perpetual servitude. If Traoré can navigate these risks and manage the Treasury Deposit Bank effectively, he could orchestrate a monumental shift that would change the course of Burkina Faso's history. Conversely, failure could have catastrophic consequences, not just for Burkina Faso, but for the entire continent. The question now is whether Africa is ready to break free from the economic stranglehold of the West. This question transcends Burkina Faso's borders. Traoré's experiment may be unfolding in a small, landlocked nation, but its implications resonate across the continent. For decades, Africa has been caught in a cycle of dependence, relying on Western institutions for financial aid and economic development. The IMF, World Bank, and former colonial powers have all played roles in shaping the continent's economic landscape, often to the detriment of the very people they claim to assist. As a result, Africa is a continent rich in resources but poor in wealth, systematically exploited and kept in a state of chronic underdevelopment. Burkina Faso's decision to establish the Treasury Deposit Bank is a direct challenge to this status quo. It is a bold declaration that Africa is ready to reclaim its future and break free from the financial chains that have long held it back. If Traoré's gamble succeeds, it could inspire other African nations to follow suit. But let's not romanticize the journey. The path to economic independence is riddled with obstacles, and there's no certainty that Burkina Faso or any other African country will successfully navigate them. The forces opposing African financial sovereignty are powerful and entrenched. Nonetheless, the reality is that sometimes you have to take risks to achieve something significant. While the stakes are undoubtedly high, the potential rewards could be even greater. Should Burkina Faso succeed in this endeavor, it could open the door to a new era of African economic independence, an era where African nations are no longer subservient to the West but are free to forge their own paths. What's at stake here? Everything. This isn't just about Burkina Faso. It's about the future of the entire continent. It's about whether Africa will remain a pawn in the global economic order or finally step into its rightful role as a player on the world stage. But what does financial independence really mean for the everyday people? This question is often overlooked in the larger political and economic discourse, yet it's the most vital question of all. Ultimately, the success or failure of Burkina Faso's experiment will not be measured by the balance sheets of the Treasury Deposit Bank, but by the impact on the lives of the people it's meant to serve. For far too long, the average African has been left out of the equation. Economic policies are crafted by elites in far-off capitals who have little understanding of, or interest in, the daily struggles of ordinary people. As a result, Africa has become a continent where poverty, inequality, and corruption prevail, while the benefits of economic growth are enjoyed only by a select few. But what if this could change? What if Burkina Faso's pursuit of financial independence could become a blueprint for a new kind of economic development, one that prioritizes the needs of ordinary people above all else? It's a compelling vision, but also an incredibly challenging one. The West warns us to be realistic. The odds are stacked against the average African. The forces of global capitalism are strong, and they will not relinquish their control without a fight. Moreover, the political and economic systems in many African nations are deeply entrenched, making meaningful change an uphill battle. Yet change is possible. It has happened before, and it can happen again. While Burkina Faso's experiment may be a long shot, it still offers a glimmer of hope. If President Traoré can pull this off, if he can create a financial system that truly serves the people, it could spark a movement for change across the continent. So, what does this mean for the average African? It means there's a chance, perhaps a small one, but real nonetheless, that things could be different. The old systems of exploitation and inequality could be dismantled and replaced with something fairer. But it also means the fight is far from over. The establishment of the Treasury Deposit Bank is only the first step. The real challenge lies ahead. The hard work of building a just and equitable economy has yet to be done. Where does this leave us? Burkina Faso's decision to create the Treasury Deposit Bank is undeniably bold and carries the potential to reshape not only Burkina Faso's economy, but also that of the entire African continent. However, it's a gamble, and the stakes couldn't be higher. As we've seen, there are numerous challenges ahead: economic instability, political pushback, and the constant threat of Western interference. Yet there are also reasons to be optimistic. At its heart, this story goes beyond banking or economics. It's about the fight for Africa's soul. Whether or not Traoré's experiment succeeds, it serves as a powerful reminder that Africa is not a passive player in the global arena. It's a continent full of people determined to reclaim their destinies, to fight for self-determination and economic justice. And that, more than anything, is what offers hope. The true power of this story lies in its message. The ultimate question isn't just whether Burkina Faso can achieve financial independence, but whether the entire African continent can rise to meet the challenge. The path forward is long and filled with obstacles, but it's a journey that must be taken if Africa is to truly liberate itself from the burdens of its past. If Africa succeeds, it won't just be an economic victory, it will be a triumph of the human spirit. It will signify that a continent, once exploited and oppressed, is finally ready to claim its rightful place on the global stage. And when that day comes, we'll have President Ibrahim Traoré to thank for paving the way. Do you think this decision will be the turning point for Africa? Is change on the horizon, in your opinion? Will Traoré avoid the mistakes of previous leaders? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to stay updated. We're committed to bringing you stories about Black culture, history, and the often overlooked achievements of Black civilizations. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.